Welcome to the Enchanted Astrology Podcast with Ariel Smith. Thank you so much for joining me as this is the second episode of the Quantum Zodiac series. In this series, we are exploring astrology as a map of consciousness, tracing the journey from pure awareness into form and ultimately into our lived experience. And today, we begin at the beginning of everything, and that is with Neptune. And Neptune, I describe as actually our natural state. So Neptune represents your higher state, your natural state of being that exists beyond form. This is before the body, before the personality, all the stories of me. And in physics, Neptune corresponds to what is called the wave function, because this is the quantum state where all potentials exist simultaneously in this perfect unified field. And it's not everything existing all at once in some sort of mass soup of chaos. It is a very peaceful, coherent unity and state, right? It's that unified field of possibility. But we are very accustomed to thinking ourselves as a human being, right? As this defined form. And so when we talk about these quantum fields or a unified field where everything exists or the potential of everything exists all at once, that can feel very abstract and very hard to relate to. So I wanted to try something just to get our minds a little bit open to this idea. So what if, just for right now, you suspend the idea that you are this body? And what if instead you thought of yourself as an idea? So what does an idea feel like to you? So for me, an idea feels absolutely limitless. It is completely free. It's mutable. It's something that can change, shift, and evolve. And you can shape an idea any way that you like. So now ask yourself, well, what happens when you keep an idea entirely to yourself? Well, it doesn't really go anywhere, right? But what happens when you share an idea? It grows. It expands. It becomes this sort of replenishing system that starts generating more ideas. And what exists before the moment that you had that idea, that moment right before the aha, here's an idea, there's this very quiet stillness, right? That unlimited field of potential right before the inception of an idea. And this is Neptune. So when we think of ourselves as a person, there are limits, right? We think of boundaries, we think of constraints, maybe expectations. It feels very contracted, right? I know where I start and stop, and it's somewhere where my skin meets the air or whatever. But when we think of ourselves as an idea, those limits dissolve. And there's no wrong idea. There's no invalid idea. There's just expression of idea. And this is where we get to know the wisdom that we associate with Neptune. And I like to use art as an example of that. I think it's a great example because art can literally be anything from a single blue line on a canvas to a very intricate, serene landscape, or it can be something dark, maybe unsettling, or very, very abstract. And while you may not personally resonate with every piece of art, that doesn't make it invalid, right? So art really cannot be wrong. It's just an expression of an idea. And the same really is true for music and dance, emotion, imagination. These Neptunian themes, these are not less real forms of existence. They are Neptunian expressions. And they are all valid in those expressions. And they are subjective. So we are used to wanting to come to an objective evaluation of things to define its validity. To say, yep, this is valid because of all these objective facts, and every single person has to agree and you can't deny. And this realm of Neptune doesn't work that way. It's subjective. So when you try to do that with art, you may get many, many people that resonate with a certain type of art or music or dance, but you will never get a 100% consensus from everybody because it is subjective, it's interpretive. So we often interpret Neptune's realm as, imagination, and it's fantasy, and it's non-reality and stuff like this. But what if that interpretation is actually backwards? If you are at your core an idea, then imagination is not something that is less real. It's more your original state before you arrived in this particular experience, before form, before your identity as a person. Now, in this series, I am blending astrology with science, but I'm also going to bring in some religious and spiritual concepts as well, because I personally don't interpret those things as being separate, as being contradictory to one another. I see them as being different languages of exploring who we are, of exploring same themes, different ways of coming to know ourselves, different ways of coming to know the same idea. And with Neptune, the Bible speaks of heaven as a place of this eternal peace. And to me, this is actually a perfect description of Neptune, because it is a state where there is no separation, there's no struggle, nothing is, fragmented or separate. There's just unity. And this is really what Neptune represents, and that's its function. And on the science side, in physics, the wave function describes that this quantum state, which is the condition where all possibilities exist simultaneously. It's this coherent field of unlimited potential. And I'm also a believer that we can learn a lot of clues through symbols. I think symbols have something to tell us. They're quite interesting when you really dig into them. And the symbol used for the wave function in quantum physics is actually exactly the same symbol that we use for Neptune in astrology, which is the Greek letter psi. And I don't think or believe that this is a coincidence. To me, it's very symbolic. And there are we could take this further, and there are other subjects, Neptune-ruled subjects, that use this Greek letter psi to denote them, like water potential and biological rhythms. And there's actually an entire rabbit hole that you could go down with that. But for the purpose of this series, we're just going to stay with the fundamental principle that Neptune is the field. Now, in astrology, Neptune is the co-ruler of Pisces, or the ruler, depending on the tradition. I personally use the co-rulership for both Aquarius and Pisces. And that's because, for a few reasons, when you map out the planets on the astrological chart through their rulership, using traditional rulership creates this perfect symmetry, and I think geometry does not lie. So, and what I mean by that is when you look at Cancer and Leo side by side, as the ruler, the moon's sign as Cancer and the sun's sign as Leo, and you start walking backwards from Cancer and forwards from Leo, so we go to Gemini and Virgo, those two signs are ruled by Mercury, and then you go back again to Taurus and Libra, and you get Venus, and then Mars and Scorpio, you get Aries and Scorpio, you get Mars, and again with Pisces and Sagittarius, you get Jupiter, and so on. And so we can look at it that way, and it's very symmetrical when you use traditional rulership. So geometrically, I like it that way. As well as we go through this series, you will see that the functions of the planets themselves support this model through expressing those functions in each sign, in the two signs that they rule. Now, Pisces is symbolized by two fish swimming in opposite directions, forming this circle. And its glyph is a horizontal line that intersects two curved vertical lines, which is kind of like connecting two worlds. And Pisces, we know, has long been associated with things like dreams and intuition, spirituality, imagination, and these undefinable, intangible realms. And for Pisces or strong Neptune placements, it can be difficult to fully buy into the rigid appearance of the material three-dimensional world, because there is often a sense of remembering that's something beyond it, and that remembering can kind of create this sense of ache or homesickness. And it comes from having to buy into the belief that you are separate from that greater wholeness, or from the higher self or the truer self. It might actually be a little bit like playing a video game, because if you're playing this video game, sometimes it can be kind of hard to take it too seriously, because yes, you understand the goals in the game and what you're supposed to do, but you also know that it isn't ultimate reality. Yet we sometimes can see players become so immersed in the game, it just feels completely real to them. But Neptune it remembers that it's really just a game. The video game is not actually who I am. It's not my ultimate reality. It's just this experience. And that can really change everything and change the way you act within it. And it doesn't necessarily mean, oh, don't play the game at all and it's totally pointless and just give it all up. It doesn't necessarily mean that at all. Play the game, but just have an awareness of the sense that it's not ultimate reality, it's not ultimate truth. And there is so much room for compassion and empathy when we remember this. So I hope this has been helpful. My intention here is not to make any claims or declarations. I am simply offering a different perspective, a way of looking at astrology, consciousness, and our experience that you're invited to explore or not. Please trust your heart's compass to decide what feels true and supportive for you. If you'd like to go deeper into Neptune, I offer a Neptune-themed yin yoga class through my website at enchantedAstrology.ca, where you can explore these energies and feel into them somatically through a beautiful yin yoga practice. And there's also a growing library of resources where you can explore these concepts further, if that feels helpful to you on your journey. Now, next episode, we move to Pluto, and this is the moment where that infinite sea of potential begins to transform as the wave starts to collapse into an experience. As always, thank you so much for listening. I truly appreciate each and every one of you, and I will be back soon.